Hello, World Singers. My name is Brooke.
And I'm Tyler.
And this is Cosmere Conversations.
Hello to all you lovely friends. We have another significant episode in our Rosharian series. Understanding the world of the Stormlight Archive is important because obviously the Stormlight Archive is important.
It ties it all together.
And one of the things that is working in the background, always there, always providing a little bit of mystery, a little bit of intrigue, a little bit of danger, are the secret societies, the secret organizations that exist across Roshar.
Yeah. And as we continue on through the Stormlight Archive, and we kind of get more and more of these secret organizations, I don't know about you, but I sometimes have a hard time keeping them all straight. Like,
yes.
What do they all want? Are they, compatible? Do they have similar goals? Do they have opposite goals? Which one is which again? And so this episode, I think, is going to be a really great resource for us to come back to and just remember the key points about these groups that I think are only going to become more and more important to the series as we continue on.
As is the tradition here, we want a one-stop shop where you can listen in sometime in the future and have all the secret organizations explained for you. There is, and I want to give a shout out to Tor, the publisher for Brandon's works. They have also seen this need existing and last year made a quick sheet
that's great.
The secret organizations, some but not all of which we are going to go over today.
Okay, cool. There is also a 2014 Word of Brandon. So that's kind of old. Take it with a grain of salt. But in 2014, Word of Brandon stated that there are currently 9 secret societies working on Roshar. We do not have them all listed in our episode today. We may not even have them all named yet in the series. I couldn't think of any more than this, but we've got a good start, and then maybe we can do some speculation about what the other societies might be.
We love the crazy speculation here. Coming up on this episode, we have 6, and I think there are even some subcategories depending on how you divided it out.
True.
We might get up to 9, but you, the listener, you can hit us up on all of the different social medias and let us know if we missed any of the important 9 secret societies. It would be noteworthy if there were exactly 9.
It would be noteworthy if there were 9. I don't know if that's changed at all since 2014.
It's a long time ago.
But yeah. Okay, let's dive right in. Let's start with the diagram.
Probably the secret organization that was most clear and upfront from the Way of Kings on, and driving the mystery behind Taravangian, the leader of the diagram, which is both the document or series of notes that he creates, that's the diagram, but it's also the overall group name.
Yes. And the goal of the group is simply to understand and to carry out the instructions of the document, the diagram, by Taravangian. That's their goal. So within that, there are sort of a bunch of sub goals as they try to execute the various different instructions within that document. But that's sort of their uniting principle.
I like your description of the goal because Taravangian's description may have been far more, benevolent to Taravangian. I think they would describe their goal as a group, as a secret organization, to save humanity, to save the people of Roshar. And that is the overall goal from their perspective. But I think what you said about following the interpretation of Taravangian and following the leadership of Taravangian is like practically what they're actually doing.
Yeah. Well, and I think there is a difference between wanting to follow Taravangian and wanting to follow the diagram. Because as we'll get into, there are actually offshoots of this group who are just following the document, who may not be like super closely tied to Teravangian.
There is a group of people directly around Teravangian, which includes Adritasia, his longtime friend, and then Moral and Mabin, who both serve as guard and kind of like aid, sometimes like cleaner, that Mabin is performing like organizational roles.
Is he also the one that tests Teravangian? Or that might be like an Ardent or something. But there's a whole group of close associates
yes.
of Teravangians who perform all of the day-to-day functions. They're sort of his retinue, so to speak. They devise the test for him each day. They judge the test, and then they permit or restrict his actions as they deem necessary. So those are sort of all of the highest level diagram members.
And then you have a subcategory who are clearly working to benefit the group, the diagram, known as the Silent Gatherers. And we would better know these people as the ones who take note of the death rattles.
Yes, and purposefully kill people, but
yeah, not a great part. So this is the bad side of the diagram. If we were going to assign morality to each of these groups, this is probably a mark in the negative column for the diagram. They do bring people to kill them to invoke the death rattles.
Exactly. They're not just like writing them down. So that's a whole group of people that I think gives us a little bit of an inkling as to how expansive and how big this group is. We mostly see that tight-knit group of Teravangian's aides, but I think we need to remember that there are a bunch of other, maybe more like casual diagram fans who are out in the world doing the diagram work, doing significant things like killing hundreds of people.
I think that is a really important aspect because there's another word that we could use here, I guess, that we're kind of specifically avoiding, but the concept of a cult and which of these groups or organizations is a cult or is pushing towards a cult or is adopting more extreme cult-like behaviors. And I think that's a interesting question because we're going to see different motivations for different groups of people. One clear aspect of the diagram that lines up with a cult is the charismatic leader and the single individual that is like motivating people. And therefore it is noteworthy with the offshoots that we have to the diagram because seemingly you have the diagram created by this great Teravangian, a really important cult-like leader, but it allows for the Graves conspiracy. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think this is something that's really interesting about the diagram as a group and is something that I think sets it apart from being a cult because it doesn't insist on conformity necessarily. It's pretty much like anyone can come and read this document, the diagram, and if you feel called to execute the instructions of the diagram in a different way from Teravangian's inner circle, go for it. Because the thing that unites them all is, again, trying to execute the instructions of the diagram. So a win for anyone is a win for everyone if it is following that document. Which brings us to Graves's conspiracy. We, of course, see this through Kaladin's eyes. This is the offshoot that he interacts with, who is trying to kill Elokar. They believe that in order to execute the diagram, they need to ally themselves with Dalinar, and that in order to do that, they have to make Dalinar king, and Elokar needs to die. That's their interpretation of what the diagram says, and so they've sort of gone off on their own quest, so to speak. Teravangian did not believe that Elokar needed to be killed necessarily, but this is the belief of one portion of the diagram.
And I believe the disagreement is actually more fundamental. You had a branch one way for the diagram led by Taravangian, which is Dalinar needs to die at the hands of Odium in probably that scene at Thalen Fields. Like, that is Dalinar's
well, I think there's
destiny.
a shift. I think that for a while, Taravangian really does believe that he can ally with Dalinar. And then at some point, he sees that that's not going to happen. And then he switches to believing that Dalinar then just needs to be killed.
Exactly. So that is, to me, the breaking point, is to go from Taravangian and being Graves, from Graves' perspective, hearing Taravangian say, like, okay, we're going to partner with Dalinar. This is for the benefit of all mankind, and this is how we're going to save Roshar. To Dalinar needs to die. And wherever that shift happened, even if it didn't happen like perfectly, it seems the ability for that shift to exist is a flaw in the accuracy of the diagram.
As we've talked about before, the diagram falls into the trap of like confirmation bias, and because it is so open to interpretation, you can read into it whatever you want to, and that does present some problems.
I definitely think it presents the problems, and Graves having the completely different idea, reading the diagram and interpreting that Dalinar needs to be exalted and lifted up, and that's the best way for human. Those are opposite things. They're just like, they're not connected anymore. So the offshoot has to either be squashed entirely, because Graves would be acting contrary to the diagram. And so I think that's an interesting idea to keep in the back of our mind as we go forward. And maybe
it makes me wonder what other offshoots are out there. I feel like there has to be some. Yeah, because like you're saying, in a situation that is so open to interpretation, that is so permissive of its members taking their own interpretations, like there's got to be a bunch of other, maybe individuals, but maybe also small groups like Graves's group that have different ideas. And I'm just so curious about like, where are they? What are they doing potentially?
That's a great point. And if we will see them reincorporated back into the story in either minor or major ways, because the diagram is an example of some type of great document for these people and on their planet. You know, it's akin to fortune telling, but we don't believe it's actually using fortune because of a word of Brandon. And I think that that amount of power, like you could take any single sentence from the diagram and you could build a whole religion around it, because it's, you know, going to be true or is highly accurate or is an important statement. And so that religious connotation and the, you know, importance and significance of someone saying, I can predict the future, this is what's going to happen, and we need to take these actions, it's powerful. What I would like for us to keep in mind is like, what's the difference between a group or an organization, a cult, a religion? All of these things are intermingling in an incredibly intricate way in the Stormlight Archive.
The diagram, however, is kind of no longer functioning, because at the end of Rhythm of War, the diagram kind of disbands. Before he ascends to Odium, he tells his close circle, his group of followers, that any members who know too much about the diagram and their plans should scatter and sort of go on their own individual quests in faraway locations so that they can't be found or tracked or anything like that. So he's scattered them to the winds, and there's not too much of a central organizing body of the diagram at present.
And that's a really interesting dichotomy, because clearly Taravangian has ascended to the most powerful position. He's literally, you know, went from being kind of like a cult leader to
I'm one of the gods now.
Yes, exactly. So he's like as good as a cult could hope for. Like they legitimately became God in the search of their diagram, in pursuit of whatever they were seeking. They became a god. And either in the setup, knowing this, not knowing this, guessing, but he like sends them away, is the opposite of what I would think would happen. You know, the stronger the pull around the single individual.
Well, at the time, he wasn't sure what his fate was
Exactly.
going to be.
It was so up in the air, and it could have like gone any direction. And so I find
And they all think he is dead, right? Like no one else knows.
in world, yeah, Taravangian is dead from
Yeah.
everybody's understanding. Is there anyone except for Zeth, maybe, who knows?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so at any time, I would think that Terravodium has the potential to, tug on some heartstrings of these
Sure, like
diagram
he already
members.
has built-in
Mhm.
agents.
And now they're scattered all across the world,
Yeah.
right where he wants them to be able to use them later.
That's a great point.
So the diagram, not really together, but also not out of a position of danger. Let's go on to maybe the second most explored of the secret organizations, the Ghostbloods.
The Ghostbloods is seemingly a much bigger organization. It spans multiple planets in the Cosmere, and they seem to have a lot of different goals that maybe all go together in some way, but also maybe are all separate because it's a much more eclectic group in the Ghostbloods.
That's a really good way to put it. And now that we know, hashtag all spoilers, that Thydakar is one of or the central leader behind the Ghostbloods, that actually makes sense because what do we know about precursor to Thydakar? Kelsier. He was great at putting together teams, letting people use their strengths to support the overall group, but maybe not
I
demanding.
don't think it's quite like that, though. Whereas Kelsier was putting together a group with different skills to all go towards a common goal, it strikes me that the Ghostbloods are more of a group of individuals that each have their own self-serving reason for being a part of the group. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know that they're necessarily working super collaboratively together. We get a lot of sentences from Mraize about how dangerous the group is, even to their own members, and they are not above stabbing their own members in the back.
Oh, certainly. I mean, the big risk for Shallan early was that she could be killed by anyone, any member.
Yeah, because she wasn't a part of the group yet.
Exactly.
And then
so
now that she's left the group, she's gotten the same threat of like,
Everyone
Mraize is
will
like,
come at
I
you."
can't protect you. Yeah, like you're fair game for anyone now.
I completely agree with what you're talking about because I think the difference between what Kelsier was dealing with and what Thydakar is dealing with is the difference between team leadership and organization leadership.
Totally.
And basically, as the team lead, he was able to interact with single individuals, helping them move towards the common goal, take down the Lord Ruler. And as the organizational lead of the Ghostbloods, he had to go out without being able to go out and find existing groups or existing networks of people that were willing to do something that was in the same direction as what Thydakar Kelsier wanted. Not necessarily that they're all perfectly united in a motivation sense. It's just like, are we going in the same way? And we can like move together as a flock type of thing.
Yeah, I think they each have their own personal goals, and it may be that their personal goals align in a way that is mutually beneficial.
For example, I think the Rosharian group of Ghostbloods is far more interested in what's happening on Roshar than Thydakar is specifically. I don't think that the motivation that Thydakar has is exactly the same as what Mraize has when it comes to Roshar.
Yeah. Like, Mraize is looking for that Cosmere economic pipeline. And Thydakar is okay with that because it means that he will get what he's looking for, which is the key to unlocking his cognitive shadowness.
He wants the key to unlock his cognitive shadowness. That's wonderful. An excellent description. We do definitely have this concept of economic control specifically over Stormlight. And we've speculated a ton about that. I don't want to dive too deep into what that could mean.
But then in pursuit of that goal, tangentially, they also want to be able to control the Oath Gates and to find all of the perfect gemstones on Roshar. Those are things that are going to enable them to do this exportation of Stormlight. So they have a bunch of disparate goals that are sort of all going together into the pursuit of a larger goal.
And the Thaylen people, as bankers, have been collecting perfect gemstones or near perfect gemstones for seemingly decades or even generations.
But Yasna says that even all of the perfect gemstones that they have, like, doesn't account for all of them.
Yes, and I think that is probably hinting at some, vast store of gemstones.
Yeah, either, maybe they're hidden with, like, the Eerie or the Iriali, like, something like that, or
the Amiens.
The Ghostbloods have them.
Yes.
Right?
There's all these questions.
They might already have a bunch.
And along with those aspects of control, they want to find and seemingly understand the power of Ba-Edo Mishram.
Yeah. We don't fully understand what exactly they want with this Unmade, but we know that they are looking for her. Obviously, they're also trying to capture and or kill the Heralds to find a solution to Thydakar's problem, to unlock that cognitive shadowness.
And we see an interest in the other Unmade, Ja'ana, who is able to make and unmake the Spren. I find their fascination and interest in the Unmade to be of importance and focus.
Definitely.
And we have lots of speculation on what the Unmade are. But for the Ghostbloods specifically, I think that Ba-Edo Mishram's triggering of a false desolation and the imprisonment that Kalek says we probably messed up and went too far in regards to that. I think both of those things in connection, like when we fully understand those, that's the big secret of like what is going on with the false desolation and what is going on with Ba-Edo Mishram's imprisonment, or maybe any of these imprisonments.
Yeah, her ability to connect in the large way that she did before the desolation, I think could be a point of interest for the Ghostbloods. And then also the way that she is contained in the gemstone. That one is the one that makes the most sense to me. I don't fully understand what they are wanting with Ja'anat or the Enlightened Spren, other than gaining power in a way that is maybe less restrictive than the regular Radiant powers. We don't know too much about the Enlightened Spren or their bonds yet, so it's hard to say exactly what that's about.
Here's what I would go out into my crazy corner and speculate. There could be a connection between the Unmade presenting a path through power or to power that avoids the restrictions that you were talking about. And basically, like, if you have an Unmade like Ba-Edo Mishram and an Unmade like Ja'ana, you might have a power to corrupt or influence Spren and a power to connect to all the Spren across Roshar simultaneously, like a big gigantic satellite device is what Ba-Edo Mishram acts, and then Ja'ana is your command line function, what you're sending out, basically. And then you could have a large impact on maybe many different types of Spren or the entire cognitive realm.
Maybe.
That's heavy speculation, doesn't mean anything at all. Let's stay focused on the Ghostbloods because they do have a shown and demonstrated hierarchy and structure.
Yeah, they're very hierarchical. We don't know for sure that Thydakar is the tippy top member. He is above everyone that we've seen so far, but I don't want to rule out the possibility that this organization is even larger than we see it right now.
Because as important as we find Kelsier as significant as he is to the Cosmere and Brandon Sanderson's writing, we do have to remember that on the time scale, even looking at the most advanced books, which are Mistborn Era 2 in the timeline, that's still a lifespan of only 350 years tops that Kelsier can exist. And the Rosharians have been doing these battles for thousands upon thousands of years.
Yeah.
So like Kelsier is a tiny sliver of what could be these long organizations on Roshar. So I definitely don't know if he's the tippy top of the spear.
Yeah.
But he's definitely convinced us so far that he is.
His branch is the branch that we've seen the most of. Mm-hmm. So we have Thydakar is the master of Ayatel, who is the woman with the Southern Scadrian mask. And then she is the master of Mraize. And then obviously Mraize has a bunch of Padawans underneath him.
What is interesting to note is that Shallan is not the first Devar that Mraize has been in control over.
Exactly. Like we talked about a little bit in our episode about who Shallan's mom might be. Her father, Lyn Devar, and his steward, Luesh, are both members of the Ghostbloods. They're members enough that they have the tattoos. And then Shallan as Vale also becomes a member for a time. Don't forget also that her first crush, Capsule, is a Ghostblood agent.
Yes, and his job, his duty was to assassinate Yasna, Shallan getting caught up in a jam of deliciousness. But that puts the Ghostbloods into this category, and we were kind of introduced to them as the secret organization that was also mixing in assassinations.
Yeah.
Kind of like Assassins for Hire. Definitely had that classic fantasy trope vibe of the secret order who was sending out assassins, and then our girl Shallan was going to go infiltrate them. And instead of that classic nature, we get kind of this amorphous blob. Every time I try to describe it and label it, it shifts into something else. Maybe not unlike the blood of which their name comes. Ghost blood, just shifting around all the time. Is it liquid? Is it ghosty material? Nobody knows.
We also know that there is an unnamed Sleepless who is part of the Ghostbloods, and this is the Sleepless that we find out was spying on Hoyd in the form of a Kremling pen.
So weird. And you mentioned the tattoos earlier. This is when we're coming into our question of, is it a cult or not? We have the charismatic leader, Thydakar.
I think it's more of a gang.
Interesting. I like that. But the tattoo is, interesting of note. Little branding is always good for cults, but also good for gangs.
Yeah, a gang tattoo.
Totally understand.
They're like, we want to know that you're with us, but it's just not there's not enough conformity for it to be a cult. Like I said, I think it's more of a loose association of people who have their own aims, and they might use other members to achieve their goals, but like they're not in it for the warm fuzzies of being a group.
Yeah, and they're also not seemingly that secret. Like this symbol is pretty obvious. Like Luesh is wearing it as a pendant. Capsule has it tattooed on like the inside of his arm, which is not, the outside or the hand, but it's also not that hidden.
He's an ardent. He's not rolling up his sleeves very much.
I guess that's true.
Yeah.
He's often shirted.
Exactly.
And definitely not exposing that safe hand unnecessarily. Keeping the sleeves extra long. But I do think that it's, a little bit interesting of note that how secret are they?
Yeah,
are they
it is interesting that
we don't need to be secret.
They're cool. Okay with having their brand name out there a little bit.
Yeah, and it seems like people kind of know about it a little.
They sort of traffic on their reputation.
Exactly.
Right?
Okay, so that's what I think is
because how powerful is your secret society if like people don't know about it? You have to be able to roll up your sleeve and be like, I'm gonna kill you and I'm gonna show you why.
Like the Death Eaters in Harry Potter, they got the, big snake tattoo, and that's in part to scare other people because like you know what's going to come.
Right. It's like you don't need to really threaten people. All you have to do is show your tattoo and they know what it means. It's a shorthand for your power. What would the
diagram do for that? Just open a book and be like, these words are very nice. They're pretty. No, I think this is actually a really good call because there is an aspect of gangs all across the world dating back throughout history of needing to declare yourself as part of like public protection. So like we hold down this block or these couple of blocks, and I think if you cross, it's like a show of respect. That's the whole Reds versus Blues, and it's just like a simple sign of like, I'm in red territory, I'm in blue territory, and what that means. I love the concept of the Ghostbloods, mainly a gang.
Yes. And I think that sort of symbolism becomes even more important when you are more of a loose collection of personally motivated individuals, because you have to be able to show each other like, hey, I'm a Ghostblood. Oh, I'm a Ghostblood too. Okay, go about your business. I won't interfere with whatever thing you have going. If you happen to meet another member in the wild.
Yes.
You're not necessarily all organized to be going in the same direction on the same mission.
I don't want to get too off track, but my whole brain is just like broken open with the now I'm seeing a Sons of Anarchy, but it's the Ghostbloods on Roshar.
Yes.
They're a motorcycle gang.
Yes.
They have their cool little patches. There's a couple of people who are going to be like, they are not called patches. You cannot say that.
Let's talk a little bit about their gang adversaries. They seem to have quite a few confrontational relationships, in particular with the Sons of Honor. They have either assassinated or attempted to assassinate a lot of Sons of Honor members. I would say that's their number one gang rival.
If the Ghostbloods are the Ghostbloods, then these are the Crips on the other side with the Sons of Honor. We're going to hold off on the question of, have the Sons of Honor also been assassinating in return? Is it a back and forth type of thing? Because this is really the driving motivation. I mean, even Gavilar's death is assumed to be the action of the Ghostbloods by Gavilar.
He speculates that it might be the Ghostbloods trying to kill him. My thought about why these two groups are so antagonistic towards each other is maybe because the Ghostbloods are trying to get answers from the Heralds, and the Sons of Honor also have an interest in the Heralds, which we will get to.
Yeah, kind of one wants them to go up, the other wants them to come down, and both cannot exist simultaneously.
Exactly.
Recently, Brandon was asked about the Ghostbloods with the questioner saying, quote, have we seen Ghostbloods in action outside of the Rosharian system?
Brandon said, you have seen proto-Ghostbloods, but not after their actual initiation. So we've seen, Ghostblood acolytes, essentially.
Yeah, acolytes, but beforehand. So I am...
Yeah, acolytes. They have not become full Ghostbloods yet. They're like Shallan in the early days.
Of course. But when Mraize is like... You have to know where you're going, right? It's like a Padawan can't exist if there's no Jedi Order, because then you're just a kid with a lightsaber. But
well, he just says not after their initiation. Mm-hmm. So they might still, be in their hazing period.
An unfortunate ritual that goes on in all societies. So do you think that we can then confirm that the Ghostbloods are world hoppers? Or once they get to Roshar and actually become part of the Ghostbloods for real, are they allowed to leave? Yeah,
well, I mean, I guess on the most basic and least exciting level, he might just be referring to Kelsier, right? Like, we've seen Kelsier outside of the Rosharan system before he was initiated into the Ghostbloods.
Yes, I think that's a good point. For sure could be a likely answer.
I think that the fact that Thydakar is in the Ghostbloods, Ayatil is in the Ghostbloods as a Southern Scadrian ethnically and Silverlight person by birth who is now on Roshar. I think those facts enable us to say that this group is definitely Cosmere wide. Mm-hmm. As far as how many other Ghostbloods like we've seen so far, I don't feel like I could really say that.
Reddit user Jolman had this to say: while I might be a little late to the party, I think I've made a connection about something. Is there a possibility that the word ghost might refer to cognitive shadows, but the concept of ghost blood being a translation of a Scadrian word that means the same thing? A very famous word, mistborn. Does ghost blood equal mistborn? Thoughts?
It's an interesting thought. I see where this person is going. Ghosts are sort of misty in that ephemeral type of way. Blood sort of connoting something that you're born with, something natural or innate. So I get the parallel. I like it. I don't know if I am completely convinced, but it's an intriguing idea.
I will at least float that this introduces another weird concept that we need to keep in mind about, do you have to be born with some aspect, some genetic marker, some spiritual DNA in order to be part of the Ghostbloods or any of these other groups?
Oh, no.
You hard no.
Hard no.
Interesting. Because a Mistborn, that's the whole thing, is like not everybody's a Mistborn. And like only special people are Mistborn.
Right. I mean, to me, the thought would be that it started as a group of Mistborn who were world hopping.
Okay.
They, said that to someone. It was translated. And then the group was called the Ghostbloods. And then over many, many, many years, the group changed and evolved to become the Ghostbloods that we now know, that is just still carrying this name.
Totally cool. Should we jump over to the main rival, the Sons of Honor?
Oh, yeah.
While the Ghostbloods had a bigger picture seemingly in mind, and the Cosmere economy as a whole as one of their driving goals, the Sons of Honor seem to be very Rosharian based.
Oh, yeah. They are fully Rosharan. Their whole goal is to return the prominence of the Vorin Church. And in order to do that, they want to bring back either the Desolations or the Voidbringers or both. It's like a chicken and egg thing. They're like, we don't know which one comes first, so we'll try both. And the point of doing that is to return the Heralds, again, to return prominence to the church. So they also have like kind of a lot of goals that are going in the same direction, but this is where I start to get like confused in my brain of like, what are they trying to do again? What's the point?
I agree, and especially when it's then put in context of characters that were maybe only seen for a page or a couple of pages.
Yeah, because sometimes
books.
The characters are focused on only one aspect of this, right? Like this might be the big goal of the full organization, but as an individual, your focus might really be on, okay, let's bring back the Desolations. And then in the back of your mind, it's like, because the Desolations will bring the Heralds and the Heralds will bring the Vorin Church. But we don't necessarily see that on the page. And so to my brain, we're like getting all this conflicting information. And I'm like, do you want the Heralds or do you want the Voidbringers? Like, what?
And the answer is both.
Both.
Incredibly confusing, but also a good example of a secret organization. Not everybody needs to know every little aspect. Your job over there, sir or madam, is to start the Desolation. Make that happen. I don't care what you do, what you need to invoke. Start the Desolation. That's what you need to know is good for the group. I don't think everybody's getting like a full memo every day about what's happening with the Sons of Honor.
Yeah, they have seemingly the most chaotic organization of the groups.
They could either really benefit from Slack, or Slack would be terrible for them. They'd all go off in their little silos.
I think Slack would be good for them.
I would hope
it would really help them coordinate their efforts, but they would just need to make sure they had a version of Slack that could communicate between the cognitive realm and the physical realm.
So, one more time. They want the Vorin Church back to its proper prominence. And part of what that means is the Heralds are fully empowered and fully realized.
Yes.
And that people honor the Heralds, and the Heralds are leading people. And the best way that they know of jumpstarting the heralds, waking them up from their eternal slumber, which is actually torture, and I'm guessing they have to be awake for it, is to start the desolation. So they had a good goal, I guess, wanting your gods.
They're like, we figured it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Mankind needs direction. Who can give us direction? The heralds. We know that the heralds come back when the Voidbringers are here. So we get the Voidbringers, we get the heralds.
I'm seeing the logic here. It might get a little bit Thanos-y for me. A little bit of just let's start the end times so that maybe some of
things
us
will be
saved.
Better. Yeah. And I am not totally convinced that it's like a we think this will be better thing, but it's just like a I want power thing. And it's like,
yes.
Who can I attach myself to that will help me get power?
And what we know as readers, that the heralds are significantly broken individuals because of the torture that they have endured, that is actually even more horrific, because now they are trying to gain power by using a person or a group of people that is incredibly weak and abused, and they're like,
not that they know this, to be fair,
they don't know it fully,
and it kind of goes the other way too. All of this gets even more messy when you realize that the Sons of Honor is being led by Roshar, who is, spoiler alert, the Herald Kalak. So Kalak is kind of using the humans. He's trying to use them to find a way again to get out of the Rosharan system. And then they are using the group to use the heralds to get power. It's really messy. I feel like no one really knows what's going on in the Sons of Honor.
That's a great point, because where both the diagram and the Ghostbloods did seem like that charismatic leader was giving them some direction.
Yeah, they seem like they at least understand the
moving.
way things work.
And here we have a leader who we also know is suffering from a magical malady that's driving him insane.
Yeah, not only is he a little bit crazy, but he is also out of the country. He's in the cognitive realm. I don't think that he's doing a great job of being the boss of the organization when he's really not present for anything that's happening. Again, Slack would be very helpful. He could at least be tapped into the day-to-day.
It would help him connect with a couple of his key members, maybe before their unfortunate deaths at the hands of assassinations.
Also, they all die. This organization
Slack
is
would have helped them
mess.
not get assassinated.
Just to be clear, we are not getting paid by Slack. This is not an advertisement.
We do not have Slack among ourselves. But if you were Papa Daddy Roshar leading your Sons of Honor around, you would want to be hitting up your main man, which is King Gavilar.
I mean, yeah, probably. Gavilar is a great example of a person who attached himself to this group, but kind of just for his own goals, his own reasons. And that is the impression that I get for a lot of the members of the Sons of Honor. They don't have very clear goals. Everyone is kind of yeah, cool, I'll join this secret society because I think it will give me some street cred, right? They want to wave their little blue bandana and be like, what up, Ghostbloods? I'm with the Sons of Honor. But they are attempting to do all kinds of different things. Gavilar, of course, is looking for sort of secrets of the universe, trying to gain power, trying to gain immortality. He's trying to learn about the heralds in order to sort of make himself like them. Kalak is trying to use the group to figure out how to get off-world. Amaram is trying to use the group to gain power and bring the Vorin Church back and make himself a good human, not necessarily an immortal human, but just a powerful person in the world. And then Aelai Sadius becomes part of the Sons of Honor, and she doesn't seem to really have any idea what the Sons of Honor is about. She's just I don't know, I'm here, I guess.
But it is her who brings Amaram and the Sons of Honor into more prominence in the world, maybe moving them from a secret organization to bringing them out, where, Amaram is anointed head of the household, but is also like publicly declared part of the Sons of Honor. And so it's like, Sadeas family aligning themselves publicly with the Sons of Honor, and clearly not working out, because then Amaram turns into a gigantic monster. He's killed by Rock. Obviously, Gavilar is killed by Zeth, who is working for the Parshendi at that time.
And we don't really have a clear answer yet as to how that came to be. We hear in Rhythm of War that I think it's Venli and maybe one other singer, they like hear a voice directing them to Zeth. And they're like, oh, cool, this guy can be our assassin. So I'm interested.
What's the voice?
Yeah, I'm interested to learn more about that exact situation and how that happened. Amaram, as you mentioned, is eventually killed by Rock. But before he's killed by Rock, he is attempted to be murdered twice. Once by the Skybreakers via Helleran, and once by the Ghostbloods. Then he is eventually killed by Rock. Lots of people want this guy dead.
He's a dick, and I think that we can all be okay with his death.
Yes. Kalak, obviously, attempted murder by the Ghostbloods via Shallan, and then Iolai is also killed by a Ghostblood agent, aka Radiant/Veil.
So Risteris, not only a little bit of a chaotic leader, but also a very good chance you're going to die if you go to work for him.
Yeah, exactly. These people did not last very long. There are, however, some offshoots of this group, sort of similar to the diagram where you have a section of people who maybe take the beliefs in a different direction. The Envisagers are actually an offshoot of the Sons of Honor, and we see this primarily through Teft and his story of his family.
Mm-hmm. Teft goes on to say this, quote, "All right, fine," Teft said. "It was some kind of cult, you see, called the Envisagers. They thought if they could find a way to return the Voidbringers, then the Knights Radiant would return as well. Stupid, right? Only they knew things they shouldn't. Things like what Kaladin can do." End quote. He will go on to talk about that he turned his family in, and that the City Lord, quote, "held a trial for them, a big one, had them all executed in the end. Never did understand that. They were only a danger to themselves." End quote. This is what's always made me question about Teft and his background. Obviously, Teft's story ends in book 4, so I didn't get the big reveal that I thought was coming with these couple of lines regarding Teft's Envisager family background. But why the harsh treatment of the Envisagers? Was maybe the City Lord a member of the Sons of Honor and they didn't like discovering this offshoot?
Oh, I don't know. I think, like he says, they're not really a danger to anyone else. I don't see the Sons of Honor necessarily feeling threatened by them. The thing that comes to mind is that at this time, the Knights Radiant were sort of frowned upon because they had abandoned humanity. They were called the Lost Radiants, and like it wasn't they didn't have a good reputation.
So it's the Vorin Church who would have been the harshest people against the Envisagers. Yeah,
and I think just the general populace, if you told someone, I want to bring back the Radiants, they would be like, why would you want to do that? Those are bad people. We don't want them to come back.
So a little bit of Satanist vibes.
Yeah.
You can't say that you want Satan around,
they're following the fallen ones.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good way of describing it. They are following the fallen ones.
Yeah.
I have a question, and this has at least been thrown around on the interwebs, about the order of things. Are the Sons of Honor the offshoot of the Envisagers, or vice versa?
Oh.
I'm wondering, because the Knights Radiant fell, the Envisagers could have seemingly existed right then, right after the falling. There would have been a group that was like, no, we still like them, but we just don't understand what they did.
Well, the Heralds left first, though, or, quote unquote, left. And so it seems like that would start first, that even if you had the Knights Radiant still around, you would be like, we would really love those extra superpowered humans to be here.
And do we have any clear distinction between what is the goal of the Son of Honor versus the Envisager?
The Sons of Honor seem to be more focused on societal change in, bringing the church back to power, like writ large, whereas the Envisagers really seem to be more individually focused. Like Tef talks about them pretty much just existing in this cult. They're all sort of together in this group. They're not going outside of their group trying to kill people to force them to manifest powers. They're only doing it within their little group.
Yeah.
So it seems much more contained versus the Sons of Honor, which are really trying to work on a bigger population level, going to the cognitive realm, things like that.
That's an excellent point. Let's take out this little bit from Feast Night, from one of the many times we've seen Gavilar's feast, when we actually get a description of other Sons of Honor that are meeting with him on that night. It goes like this, quote, King Gavilar himself stood pointing at something on a table, surrounded by 5 others, 2 officers, 2 women in long dresses, and 1 old man in robes, end quote. This is the group of the Sons of Honor as we see them. We think that...
Do we know that for sure?
I mean, yeah, it is that moment referenced later by words of Brandon as like a meeting of the Sons of Honor.
Got it. Okay.
So we could make a couple of guesses. For example, the officer, at least one of them could definitely be...
Could be Amaram.
He's always looking officer-like. You have 2 women in robes, so Ilalei Sadius could theoretically be one, but that would be interesting at that time, and working with Gavilar. That would be surprising. And then Kalak could be the old man in robes. I guess he could even be the other officer.
He's not ever described as looking old. Mm-hmm. Not in that way. Kalak is there, and he's described differently. So I don't think this is Kalak.
Okay. So there's a couple of, missing pieces, basically. We got a couple of puzzle pieces that are shaded out, and we don't know what they look like.
Yeah, like the old man could be an ardent, right? Trying to bring back the prominence of the Vorin church. The person in robes could also be a world-hopping Feruchemist. Mm-hmm. The robes are not described, so they could be those characteristic Feruchemist robes. Just some ideas.
Lots of speculation, and I love it. Do you want to go on to our next secret organization?
Of course. Next, we have the Skybreakers.
This is definitely when we're starting to move from secret organization to just regular organization. However...
But they were operating in secret.
There's the key point. Up until relatively recently, they existed as a hierarchical organization around Nail and were operating throughout Roshar.
They're secretly. The only Order of Knights Radiant that has operated sans interruption for the whole time. And under the leadership of Nail, their goal is to prevent the desolations from beginning again by killing any and all people who start to show radiant powers. So they have sort of the opposite opinion from the Sons of Honor. The Sons of Honor think that the Voidbringers will start the desolations and bring back the Heralds. The Skybreakers believe that Knights Radiant will bring back the desolations and therefore the Voidbringers.
Such an interesting bit of a lore that Sanderson has presented here with the chicken and egg, the misunderstanding of history, the biases of history. Obviously, Nail here as the leader of the Skybreaker and kind of working directly against the goals of the Sons of Honor, who we now know is led by Kalak, another herald, is intensely interesting. The concept that they're both in this loop of desolation, Voidbringers, Radiance, heralds fighting, blah, 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 blah. And they're both trying to predict or circumvent and prevent that loop from continuing. And that's really what I see so much throughout the Stormlight Archive, is that this is about trauma loops and the experience of post-traumatic stress disorder, as we've talked about ad nauseum through these individual characters, but it's also shown at every level, at this level of the groups that are stuck in this concept of time existing, over thousands of and thousands of
restarting.
Years. And so Nail looking at it as the thing that is bad in this equation are the Radiants. The Radiants are the outlier, maybe connected to the fact that what ended up weakening the radiance of the past was the revelation that they were invaders to Roshar.
Yeah, it could have something to do with the Recreants. It could have something to do with Honor no longer being around.
Mm-hmm.
Nail might have some sense of the power that is, unchained, as we keep hearing, quote unquote, and maybe trying to prevent something like that. I think any logical explanation that may have existed at one point for Nail doesn't exist anymore. Like, I think that he is, at this point, divested from any sort of rational reasoning by the time we meet him.
Yeah, even the earliest meetings with Yim, he represents his own unsureness, which we know is because of the insanity he's dealing with. And so he's both questioning and doing something that he doesn't fully
He's kind of just on autopilot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's like a robot at this time.
He's just like, this is what I do.
Yeah.
I kill Radiance.
Mm-hmm.
And we know, per word of Brandon, that throughout all of these years, having followed Nail so closely, the Order of the Skybreakers is much, much more rigid and is different now than they were at one point.
Because they are following that charismatic leader leading me.
I don't know if I'd call him charismatic, but
I'm just using the
dogmatic.
Language, sure, exactly. I'm using the language of cults, which is at the center, there can be a charismatic leader who is uniting everyone and their ideology. This is the difference maybe in some other organizations.
In my opinion, the Skybreakers would be the most cult-like.
Exactly, because he is also a god and incredibly long-lived. So you have that kind of...
Sure, continuity of leadership.
Yes, over long periods of time.
And there is no room... There's no room for error. Mm-hmm. There's no room for other interpretation. There is no room for not following the rules in any way.
Of death.
Yeah, I mean, the whole definition of this group is like, you will follow these very rigidly defined rules to the letter, period.
Now, we see the Skybreakers in action way before we even recognize them as Skybreakers, because Helleran is the knight that is killed by Kaladin, but Helleran is on a mission to murder Amaram in the field of battle, sent by the Skybreakers, not as just part of war.
Unknown if he's directly sent by the Skybreakers, but I think that is a good guess.
Because he is a member of the Skybreakers.
Yes.
Of note, he is not empowered like a Sky. He's not a Radiant.
If anything, he's just an acolyte. He's trying to gain the favor of the Skybreakers.
And this may be his test, as we know that Nail tests the acolytes, and we saw that through Szeth, that occasionally that test comes down to murder this person because they broke the law. And we are introduced kind of in this backdoor way into the philosophy of the Skybreakers, where Szeth is going in as that abnormality that he is. The uniqueness, that he doesn't represent everything that the Skybreakers do, but he's also our Radiant in the Skybreakers.
But at least now, he is also the only Skybreaker on Dalinar's side in this big war. The rest of the Skybreakers are now fighting on Odium's side, the Singers' side, because they see the Singers as being the true owners of this land, and therefore they dictate the law of the land.
Exactly. And that's where the ancient history, and the fact that it's not ancient history to Nail, he experienced that, is so important. If he is of the belief that Roshar belongs to the Singers and he needs to follow the laws of the land that he is in, then again, it is that logical nature, but it also makes sense why the directive is kill Radiance. Because the Singers are the ones at threat when the Radiance arise. Like, it's bad for the Singers.
Do you think he forgot that the Singers were the native people of Roshar for a while and then is reminded? Did he start out with the goal to kill Radiance because they are the invaders, as we found out during the Recreants?
That's my speculation, is that his again, I don't love the concept of just calling them robots or like seeing them as Terminators, but like a programming error basically happened where he was intaking information that was conflicting and he needed to process that down into something he could understand in his broken state. And his solution was humans bad because singers are good. And I think he would have always had to know deep down, even if he, mentally forgot it because of broken nature. He had to know that the humans were the invaders. There's no...
You would think so.
Herald that could exist when we know that some of the heralds directly came from Ashen.
Yeah.
So there's really no way...
Good point.
He could be confused.
Yeah.
But then what does that do to a person who wants to follow rules and seemingly is closely related to the goals of honor as well, but then builds an organization around them that is based on the lie of you are the good guys. He knows they're not the quote unquote good guys. They might be well motivated, blah, 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 but they are...
They're the original invaders.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it creates a dichotomy, which then breaks Nail. And it breaks him in the same way that I think honor is broken later.
I feel like this was a really good therapy session.
For Nail.
Yeah, for understanding Nail. Okay.
Welcome to understanding Nail.
Yeah. I think it's also one little detail that I want to throw in here as well while we're talking about sort of members of the group. Shallan's mother's friend, who is present and is also killed by Shallan when she is a little girl, is a member of the Skybreakers.
And we put a lot of speculation into the episode regarding Shallan's mother, different theories about her. One of the primary being that she is a member of the Skybreakers as well, and that Helleran was merely following in his mother's footsteps.
There's a few different ideas about how then Helleran ends up also being part of the Skybreakers. But it's just an interesting connection for us to keep in mind. Maybe we'll get some more details about that relationship as we start to move forward. You ready to move on?
Let's go to the most secret organization on our list. These are the Sleepless.
We don't know too much about the Sleepless. We are really only just starting to scratch the surface about this group.
The most information that we got about them comes from Dawn Shard, which was Risen and crew visiting the Cloaked in Mist continent of Amia.
We also get some information in Edge Dancer, of course, with Lift encountering that memorable Sleepless Arklow.
Different Sleepless. There's a couple of different types of Sleepless. We learn from Nickley that the members of the Sleepless are organized into entities called swarms.
There are 24 Sleepless on Roshar currently. 20 members follow the quote-unquote first swarm, and they work together as a group. Nickley is a part of this group.
One of the younger members.
He is the youngest.
And that actually makes him valuable in their society because he's like good at intermingling into people world.
Good with the new technology.
Oh my gosh, Nickley is helping all of his great-grandparents with iPhones.
Yeah, 100%. That's his role. They're all like, Nickley, we need you to come over and show us how to check our email. And he's like, okay, guys, I'll be there.
And then you have members like Arklow, and we assume the other ones we don't know the name of, who are around, but are like their own swarms.
Two different categories here. Arklow doesn't follow the first swarm. He's not super tapped into that group of 20, but he's also not considered a traitor. So he's sort of in the middle. He's a floater.
Oh, okay. Free agent.
Because then there are 3 other Sleepless rounding out our 24 who are actively dissidents. They're actively working maybe against, but definitely not with that group of 20. And probably included in that group of 3 is the swarm that is part of the Ghostbloods spying on Hoyd.
Okay. So we have probably an independent agent, at least one, who could be working with the Ghostbloods, and then 2 others who are the dissidents. We have middle of the ground, Mindy St. Clair, Arklow.
Yep.
And then we have the 20 members who followed the first swarm, which includes Nickley. This is the first organization that is not human in nature. I know that some of our leaders and our charismatic are not human anymore. But
they at least were human at a time.
Exactly. The Sleepless,
I don't think have
human.
ever been human.
Never human. And that to me makes understanding their goals or their desires, their drives, to be much more difficult than any of the other groups that we've talked about so far. They definitely seemingly want to prevent destruction of the worlds.
Yeah, their stated desires or goals are to protect life and to protect the destruction of worlds. However, they are not above killing the few to protect the many. Mm-hmm. So in the trolley problem, they are definitely going to kill the one person to save the 5 people.
I like how we've just made everything into a good place reference.
Always.
As we should. I think that's important to understand about them because they do have a trolley-esque problem presented to them regularly in the form of the Dawn Shard. And like, what are we going to do about these Dawn Shards? It seems like they may have been more powerful in Roshar's past, maybe more capable.
The Sleepless?
Yes.
Got it.
It seems like the Sleepless may have been more powerful in the Rosharian past, more able to protect and prevent and operate powerfully, and then have needed to retreat into seclusion, losing some of their magical powers or technological powers, and trying to throw up like the last little bits of power that they can to protect the Dawn Shard.
I think they are powerful. I don't know if I necessarily believe they've lost power. I think it's more that they are disinterested in the power struggles of humans. And so in sort of a god or demigod-like way, they are removed from, the sort of day-to-day goings on because their nature and their goals are so much bigger than everything else.
They certainly are operating with the most mystery behind their desires and drives. I think that one of the important bits of information that we have about the Sleepless is that they actually write the book back blurbs that we did an episode on a little while ago.
Yes, which is so intriguing. I am sure that we are only going to learn more and more about the Sleepless as we continue on in the Cosmere, because they are all across the Cosmere. They are extremely long-lived and seem to have a significant interest in the goings-on of the greater Cosmere, both like width-wise, all of the Cosmere, and also depth-wise in terms of from gods all the way down to men.
An interesting bit of speculation, their ability to, exist in a swarm might actually be helpful to understanding what it is like to exist as honor spren, as bound entities and cognitive shadows.
Interesting.
And therefore, they may be part of the answer of how to disconnect those chains to your spiritual homeland and help some of these characters get off. For example, we know that Hoid eventually leaves Roshar, but we also know that having a Sprenbon binds you to the location. So he shouldn't be able to leave Roshar, but we know that he does, meaning that he figures out some way to leave Roshar. The worst case is that he has to sever that Sprenbon, and we lose design. So I keep coming back to, and especially when I see these powerful characters like the Sleepless, any little bit of inclination of like, who can separate themselves? Who can divide some of these bonds that exist through the 3 realms? And the Sleepless aren't quite there, but they're at least far more unique than many of the other species that we've
they do exist on other planets, so they can world hop.
Exactly, but it's like, is it the whole swarm have to go?
Yeah,
if they're gonna
I
world
think
hop,
so.
Or can they send out a couple
I don't know
of
if
the
they
swarm?
can leave just a couple hordlings in one place.
That would be super
But
interesting.
we'll
Could
have to
you
watch
grow
and
a
see.
second swarm from like a Left Behind? Is that how, they like sent out a little bit and that develops all by itself?
That is my impression. I don't know if we've gotten this actually confirmed, but somewhere in my brain, it's saying that is how they reproduce, is like one from the other.
Yeah, I kind of, wonder if it is like a coral reef, just kind of like it stretches over the existing rock formations and whatnot, but then occasionally like stuff gets spread around and then it starts over there and can just like grow. It's not the same organism anymore because there's enough separation.
Yeah.
But it is of the same organism, of the same reef. And that type of question about the Sleepless, we don't have any answer to, but they're so powerful that I think it's worthy of thinking about. Let's go on to the very last one, which is the 17th Shard.
17th Shard, everyone's fave.
Exactly. Not our good friends over at the 17th Shard. That's here in the real world.
They are also great, but they are not very secret.
At least not to us. They very closely related. 17th Shard in world has been operating as one of the longest lasting Cosmere-wide organizations.
It sure seems so. We don't really know what their goal is, what they're trying to accomplish, but we do know that they believe in non-intervention. And so at least one of their goals is to find and stop Hoid from intervening, which seems also like an intervention, but...
That's an interesting question because it's kind of like a little bit of the Disney Plus Loki series and like, who's the variant? Who's the real one?
Yeah,
Who gets to make decisions? Apparently,
they
Hoid,
really think that Hoid is the variant.
Yes, they are like, you are causing problems in the timeline and we need to stop you. But that then puts them in a position of incredible power, knowing about many of the shard pools, many of the routes, and the Cosmere economy that exists, being the reason for a lot of the Cosmere economy. Like a lot of the passing around of energy and people is coming because of the 17th Shard and going from like different... Well, you have Silverlight.
We don't know that the 17th Shard is necessarily strongly connected to Silverlight. Silverlight is their base of operations.
So it's a location. We'll
yes.
just go with. So like you have a location like Silverlight that people are traveling to just because of the 17th Shard. Not everybody, but somebody is going to Silverlight just because of the 17th Shard.
Sure.
And that means that there is, they're so big that they've also probably lost the pure secret banner, but they also still exist in the shadows and we don't know what they want.
Yeah, and I think because of their goal of non-intervention, they are much more on the sidelines than some of these other secret groups that we sort of spot having their hand in things. The 17th Shard might be around, but they're way more chill.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if the 17th Shard and their agents are the ones who are delivering the letters between people like Frost.
Yeah, I mean, that would
Harmony
make sense.
And, getting all of these messages around the Cosmere. So basically, are they mailmen?
Yes, they are. The Interplanetary Postal Service.
The Interplanetary Postal Service, the IPPS, getting your letters wherever they need to be.
If it fits, it ships.
So now that we have either elevated the 17th Shard or demoted the 17th Shard.
I think that's a severe demotion.
I think that they also have a scholarship bent because of our patron saint and scholar, Chrysala.
I think we don't know. Again, we don't know for sure that they are related. Chrysala is definitely in Silverlight being a scholar. I don't know that she is also a member of the 17th Shard.
But it is heavily speculated.
I think
we just don't have enough about
they're very close together, but I don't know where the overlap is between those two groups.
There could be a Graves conspiracy or Envisager situation going on here.
Yeah,
where
we
like
just
splits
don't
working
know.
Together. I think what we do know is that the membership of the 17th Shard does seem to be the most diverse, which is interesting. While we cannot say that they are members, Chrysala and Naz, if confirmed to be in the future, would be representative of the planet Taldane. And then we have a bunch of other characters.
Obviously, we have Galadon from Elantris, Demu and his wife Asladin from Scadrial, Baun, also from Taldane, part of Chris's OG group.
The retinue.
Yep. And then, interestingly, Ayatil, Mraize's master, was formerly part of the 17th Shard. And she was specifically recruited by the Ghostbloods. The Ghostbloods specifically try to recruit field agents of the 17th Shard, which I found very interesting.
Yeah, because it kind of gives us a perspective in world about like how these secret organizations rank themselves and the different motivations that may attract someone to the 17th Shard, seemingly for Ayatil, is enough to also attract them to the Ghostbloods.
Yeah. In this episode, we've kind of gone through these organizations in the order of like who we've seen the most to who we've seen the least. But I think it also is sort of reverse age order. Like the 17th Shard and the Sleepless, I think, have probably been around for longer than organizations like the Diagram, which is maybe why we don't know as much about them, because they're going to have much greater Cosmere significance.
It certainly seems like an organization with such broad reach is going to be significant to the future of the Cosmere. And I wonder if this role of non-intervention that the 17th Shard has is a hint or a little bit of a connection to our man Harmony over on Scadrial.
Interesting.
He certainly seems to have a non-interventionist policy that he's dealing with personally.
Yep.
And we know that he has referenced the 17th Shard in the letters that he has written. So because of that connection to Harmony, because of what you mentioned about the long lifespan that is likely of the 17th Shard, because of their hatred or focus on Hoid, I think that there is a lot more to learn about the 17th Shard and that they will be in the future of the Cosmere a lot more.
So that is 6 secret organizations.
With a couple
Supposedly
of offshoots.
there are 9. Yeah, if we count maybe the Invisitors as their own group, we're up to 7. I want to throw out the possibility that the Irie are also in play somewhere on Roshar. I don't necessarily think we've seen them, but maybe they are included in that total number of 9.
One that we left out that may need to be more incorporated is the most secret organizations in the Vorin Church, like deep within the bowels of the church. Who's pulling the strings there?
Oh, you think there's like a sect that we don't know about?
Yes, basically. I'm saying that, there could be, that would make sense. Where if I was going to hide a secret society, where would I do it? Inside the church.
Sure.
And obviously this church has a lot of competing elements and these different groups that all have religious connotations, aspects, beliefs. I think that we might be missing something going on in the Vorin Church specifically. My only other speculation for a possible one is like, what about the Shin? The Shin are kind of secret. They have,
I don't think that nobody else has. As a secret organization.
But they might have one within their society.
They might.
There might be a Shin specific in the same way the Sleepless have kind of a secret society going on. Those are our speculations. You can definitely reach out on all of the different social media. Let us know about other secret organizations that are operating on Roshar. Let's go over a couple of programming notes, a couple of updates. Number 1, always available to join the Patreon, where there are some extra special bonus episodes going on right now for our Lightbringer reread series. It's going great.
Yeah, we've gotten so much positive feedback, and it's been so fun to have this other great series to dive into and talk about. So definitely check that out. Also, because you might miss us. This is going to be our last podcast episode until we come back after the summer for a lead up series to the release of The Lost Metal. So hit us up with episode ideas, what kinds of episodes you'd like to hear before we get the next Wax and Wane book. We've already got some ideas that we'll be working on during our break, but we always love hearing from you guys. If you miss us over our summer break, then join us on Patreon, find a bunch of new books to read, listen to our dulcet tones.
We will be taking our summer break to do a bunch of rereading of Mistborn Era 2, and let's be honest, probably Mistborn Era 1 as well. And that amount of reading takes time. It takes dedication. And that's what we want to bring to you as much as possible. When we come back, we will be ramping up for The Lost Metal. And until that time, we would love if you take a moment to rate us, review us on any of your different podcast applications. iTunes is great. A lot of people use it, and we don't ask for rates and reviews all the time, but during the summer month, it is great because it's also our birthday. So throw us a birthday review.
Our birthdays are coming up. If you would like to get us a gift, please just hit the 5 stars wherever the stars are shown.
We hope that you all have a very enjoyable and safe summer months, and we shall return at the end of the Sandersonian drought for another Mistborn book that awaits us. Brooke, can you take us away?
Until next time, life before death,
strength before weakness,
journey before destination.